are you doing? I've taken up meditation, so I'm actually quite good. A little bit about meditation before I get into our little conversation. Meditation gets a bad rap because most people think that what you do is you sit down and you completely clear out your mind. Well, that's not really how it works because your mind can never truly be completely cleared out until death, we suppose. Really, what you should do, here's my little tip for those of you who might be interested in meditating. Sit down in a nice quiet room in a comfortable position and breathe. Breathe in deeply and focus on your breathing. Focus on your breathing in and focus on your breathing out. And just do that. And when a thought comes into your head, return to the focusing of the breath. And that thought will go away and you can continue on. Do that for about 5 or 10 minutes to start and just build up until you're doing it for 15 or 20 minutes a day. It's 15 or 20 minutes a day. Spend that time on yourself and the improvements you will see in your quality of life will be dramatic. I promise you. Anyway, little PSA there. Let's talk about the topic at hand. I'm about to finish The Ghosts of Brookhaven, which is my first ever Gothic ghost story. And last week, actually, I was supposed to talk to you about this last week, but I had to go to the dentist, and I was in no shape or form to speak with you after the dentist. Hence, our little conversation now. Anyway, last week, I had reached about the 40,000 word mark on Ghosts of Brookhaven, and something dawned on me. Something bothered me. Something scared me. Not about it, not within the book, but about the book. One of the characters in the book, one of the ghosts in the book, became something that I didn't quite intended to have in this book. Kind of borderlined between ghost and monster. Not really in the monstrous realm. I mean, this still is truly a ghost story. But I became concerned. Now, I'll straight up tell you that what it centered, my concern centered around the ability of this ghost to kind of rattle the walls with his footsteps. And I started thinking, is that really in line with what I intended with this story? Has this particular character become more than is necessary? One of the things I always try to do in my writing, even when I'm writing something like a ghost story, is to try to deliver something that offers a modicum of reality. I don't like things that can't be possible, even when we're dealing in the realm of ghosts, because there are people out there, and I'm somewhat one of them, who believe that ghosts exist. I've seen way too many things for me to not believe it. But even with this, I wanted it to be realistic. And I started thinking, is this particular trait of this character realistic? Have I reached too far? So what I thought I would do is kind of put my story through a bit of a reality test. And I do this frequently with my novels, in that I try to see if it's possible for me to recreate something that is adjacent to or directly related to what it is I'm questioning about the work. And there was a happy accident that occurred in the house in which I live. I live in a house that's 100 years old. It's a wonderful house. I love my house. And as soon as it happened, I realized, you know what? I'm okay. I'm good. What I wrote in with this character in this story is okay. What happened was, I was downstairs in the basement, and my wife who is a very petite woman, walked across the floor. And it sounded like, even though she's a petite little woman, it sounded like a bison happened to open up our front door and casually walk through the house and go out the back door. A bison. It was loud. And it shook things. Now, even though my wife is a very petite woman, she kind of slams a little bit when she walks. She walks heel first. I'm the other way around, mostly because I like to be really quiet. I try to be a ninja in the house. Not so I could sneak up on my wife and scare her, although I used to do that a lot, but I just like to be quiet. So when I heard her, aka the bison, walking through the house, I realized what I wrote is not that far removed from reality. And then I started testing it. I would go to the third floor of the house and wait for her to walk. And I would hear her walk through the second floor of the house. Bingo. I still heard it. And in some cases, there were indications I could feel it. Now, if she walked in the basement, I couldn't hear it because the basement is a cement floor. But as long as it was a wood floor, I knew where she was. So, as soon as that happened, I started thinking back to other stories that I had written, other books that I had written, and those other moments when I realized, or I thought, that I had gone a bit too far. And I realized that along the way, I was doing these kind of reality checks and making sure that I wasn't writing beyond the realm of believability. Now, if you are writing something, and you should always have in the back of your head this editor that is willing to go, nay, that's too far. That's not believable. That doesn't work. You should have that in there. And when that editor in your head pokes their little face into your mind's eye and taps you on your brain and says, no. It is time for you to step back and say, how can I test this in reality? Now, that's not saying there are certain things that you write about that you simply cannot test in reality. And you shouldn't test in reality. However, thanks to things like Mythbusters and other educational television series and web series and articles and things like that, you can do a little research to find out if something is actually plausible in your book. And if you don't find something and it has nothing to do with murder or, destruction of property or anything like that, or harming other people, you can enact your own little scientific experiments. I did it when I was writing, I think it was either Clockwork Cabaret or TikTok Girl. I can't remember which one it was, but I had written something about steam and how it, or not steam, but smoke, how it would billow out of an engine. And I recreated that with smoke bombs that you could buy, like those little tiny little balls that you can get during 4th of July. We used to love them when we were kids. We'd light them up and toss them and do all their funky things with them. So I created a little experiment wherein I built this sort of mock backpack engine that was worn on the steamers in that story. And I lit some of those fireballs and put in there just to see how if the smoke would come out as I thought it would. Now, granted, that was my imagination that created that, so I could have not done the experiment and said, hey, I created this universe. I created the steamers. It's my baby. It can behave in the way that I want it to behave. But like I said, I always try to have some semblance of reality and realism in my stories, even when it's a post-apocalyptic zombie story, or a story that takes place in hell, I always try to let logic and reason guide me. And in this case, with the Ghosts of Brookhaven, I got it was a moment of whew, thank goodness, because I didn't want to have to go back and completely rewrite this one character, because he eventually became central. He kind of became the antagonist of the story, sort of. So I would tell you, all of you writers out there, to make sure that you're doing these kinds of reality tests and checks, and to ensure that your works don't go beyond the realm of believability. Now, that doesn't mean you have to test everything, but you need to check everything. You need to check yourself before you have to test yourself, to repurpose a phrase. So, I don't think it's just me that strives to have that level of realism in unrealistic stories. I know that there are so many authors out there who want that same thing in their books. And it doesn't take a whole lot to check this. Even the smallest little things, like your spouse walking through a house with a mouse, only to grouse at their spouse. Anyway, so I'm almost finished with the Ghosts of Brookhaven. I'm really excited about it, while at the same time I'm nervous because I haven't written anything like this before. And so when I send it to my beta readers, I'm going to be like, oh gosh, what's going to be the word coming back from them? Fingers crossed that it works. I think it does. I'll be giving it a reread before I send it to them, so I'll know. This is going to be, and I'm really excited to actually go back and reread it to make sure that what was in my head came out onto the page, because what was in my head was pretty fantastic, if I may brag just a little bit. But hopefully, interestingly enough, I will probably have this to the publisher before Fear 3 is even finished with edits. So that's just the way that cookie crumbled. The editor has yet to start on Fear 3 because she was backed up with other books from the publisher. So Fear 3, I'm guessing probably late spring, early summer, and Ghosts of Brookhaven shortly after that. I don't know. Here's one thing. Here's a really cool announcement that I'm going to make. And that announcement is I am going back to the Reaper series. Yay! I'm so happy about that. The publisher wants me to continue on with it beyond the trilogy. I already know what's going to happen, or I have a vague idea of what's going to happen. But I'm just so excited to go back to that universe because I loved that series. And readers just have been craving the next book in the series for a very long time. And it's just time. So now, of course, I've got to go back and reread the third book to remember everything that happened. So there's not a disconnect between the third and fourth book. But that's going to happen. There will be a fourth book in the Fear series. Both of those, my idea now is to continue both of those series on ad nauseum until I've just run out of ideas for them. And in the meantime, there's plans for me to co-author a book with someone. And I have another one-off that I'm going to write called what is it called? The something. I don't remember what it's called. I've got it in my to-be-written book. But it was inspired by a song. And it's going to be my first book back to pure horror. The Congregation, that's what it's called. It's going to be really cool. And it's going to have a message. Anyway, I'm rambling. I apologize. Reality tests and reality checks. Do them, make them part of your process, and your books, your novels, your stories will be better for them. Anyway, thank you for being a part of my world. I appreciate it. I respect you. I love you. I hope that I help you and inspire you, or maybe just entertain you for a moment. Anyway, have a wonderful day. And remember, like my muse, you people are so freaking awesome.